If you've been looking at the Axial SCX10 III range for a while and thinking about pulling the trigger, the Base Camp may just get you over the line. And I can't help but think this might just be the Honcho's replacement. Let's take a look at it. This is their budget offering, but my initial impression says that this might just be quite a performer. This thing came out 4 weeks ago, and it's an interesting mix of things. Let's crack it open and take a look at it. Yeah, I got the green one. That's clever. I like this. That's thoughtful packaging. Includes batteries, a wheel wrench. Also in the box is a manual. This is not a criticism, just a note. There's grease marks on the cardboard underneath where the diffs were sitting. That tells you at least that they've got plenty of oil in them. It also tells you that they're not completely sealed, but that's also not a big deal. Now I've seen some photos of this. It's been out for about 4 weeks now at time of filming. We're at the very start of June here as I film this. I haven't seen this in the flesh until right this moment, and I've got to say, the body looks better in person than it did on screen. But there are still those little axial touches like pull tabs and thoughtful packaging that tell you that you've bought something of quality. Accounting for the cost of money today and in the past, I think this is the cheapest axial crawler they've ever released. It is a plain body with painted windows. What a bummer, painted windows. They just did one lazy kind of screen print underneath. What a shame. Still, my point stands. As much as it would be nice to have clear see-through windows, which all the other competitors to this thing do incidentally, except for the very cheap RG-T, which was 60% the price of this guy. That's a shame, but otherwise things are getting better and better. I think this might take the place of the SCX10 and SCX10 II Honcho, but for what you get, this is a lot better. I understand it's a 5-gear transmission. Now I've had quite a few SCX10s and SCX10 IIs over the last decade, and this is a Boom Racing copy of the SCX10 II transmission, and your motor sits back here. You can see the similarities here, but this one's much bigger. This thing is a little bit different because this thing ships with portals. So they could have shipped with the old style SCX10 II type transmission. But if you replace the portals with straight through axles, your rotation will be different. Remember, you've got a bigger gear in the bottom of the portals and a smaller one on the axle. So your wheel has to drive backwards to make the bigger gear at the bottom of the portals drive forwards to spin your wheels. So if you replace this with straight axles, your transmission will need to spin the other direction. Motors have a preferred direction because you've got brushes that kind of sit on the armature like that, and so the motor better spins this way. It'll still go the other way, but it's happier spinning a certain direction. So while you could reverse your wires, it's better if you can reverse your drive through the transmission. So that's probably why this thing comes with a reversible gear set. I understand you can just take one of the gears out and it'll drive straight to the drive shaft. That's curious. For over a decade, you've had 2 wide and 2 narrow with shallow and deeper pairs of screws for your skid plates with axial designs. This is a whole new set. Wonder why they've changed that. The other thing I see here is you've got have a look at this. Under the Sendero, for example, you've got really similar side plates to this. I've modified my Sendero, but these are the sliders here, and the sliders usually sit inside these rails. Now I've moved mine up when I modified on my stage 1 video, but these are the actual rock sliders. They're just your side pans. Gen 8 V2 is the same with a different attachment schema, so it also has sliders, but they bolt to the side pans. TRX4 Sport also has side pans and sliders. Even the RG-T back there, the Pioneer, has the same thing. This thing doesn't have sliders, so you haven't got that body protection. But there are screw holes in there, and it looks like it's ready to take side steps or sliders. It's the same drive shafts that we've seen on the other SCX10s, and these are really good. As far as plastic drive shafts go, they're about as good as it gets for plastic. I don't expect we're going to have any problems with that. Now, one thing I noticed on my build of the SCX10 III was there was some play, and I still see that same play here. The drive shaft can move, and it's a yeah, it still has that clicking. So this could benefit from having a shim in there that just smooths up that mesh to make it consistent for forward and reverse. The back has it too. So maybe a 0.3 mil shim at each end could help smooth out the drive. I don't know why Axial doesn't address that, but it's not a big deal. Oh, hey, we've got one of these from, what came with this? The Armour uses the SLT3 as well. I knew I'd seen this radio somewhere. My Armour Centum 3S BLX comes with the SLT3. Same radio as what comes with this guy. It's a 3-channel, nice and basic. Doesn't have the thumb piece, doesn't need it though. And you simply have your steering rate or your endpoint for steering. It's not individual though, it's just the maximum. And your throttle and steering trim. You can adjust the endpoints using buttons and presses in order. Takes 4 AA's, of course. AA's are supplied, which is great. And we've got a few adjustments on the back too. We've got a throttle limiter and throttle and steering reverse and your power button. This is a nicer radio than the SCX10 II used to ship with, so that's really good. Although this body makes the whole thing seem quite cheap, my otherwise initial impression with this cheapest ever of Axial systems is actually pretty good. Here's a really speedy rundown. Brand new aluminium shocks with what looks to be, the springs are certainly a different color to what they used to be, and I suspect they're slightly thinner diameter than the metal on the SCX10 II springs. I've got a few here. Yeah, and there are more coils on them too. So even down to the coils, these are entirely new shocks. They're oil filled, they're very plush, and look, the bias from the start, I would like to see a little bit more drop in the front than the back. It is softer in the front than the rear. Perfect. Perfect. They've gone back to this body post mount style. It comes up and forward, which works. In my experience, having built a bunch of custom rigs and mucked around for years, I always prefer if the interior part, like the old ones used to have a little loop forward here, you can get straight posts up to your body. It just makes the whole thing a bit more rigid. These things tend to fatigue over time. Totally minor. And I do note while we're looking at this that there are 5 positions for the shocks, front and rear on the towers. Yep, completely upright gives you the most linear progression through, but it's a little bit harsher. This is out of the box. The stock setup is pretty nice. Now we've got 2 battery pack locations. I tell you what, you're going to see people doing this, and I'm going to do this too. I'm going to move that there. You want it forward. We want the battery forward. I've got a bunch of these little 700 milliamp hour 3S batteries I test all the rigs with. It'll sit here and that's fine. This is the Viterra Ascender, and it has a telescoping chassis. So you've got bolt points, and you can adjust your wheelbase by lengthening or shortening the chassis. This rail fits inside this rail, and so you can change your total length. The base camp's the same. The smaller rail fits in the large rail. So having an adjustable chassis, just like the Viterra Ascender, that's actually really nice to see. The Dynamite 35 turn 540 3-pole motor is a fixture of the SCX10. It's a 40 amp basic Spectrum. It's got their IC3 attachment, which I shall replace with a XT60 because all my batteries are that. Separate radio, and the servo is the Spectrum S614. That's the same servo as comes in the Gladiator and very likely in the other SCX10 III range. It's the same 14.5 kilogram metal geared waterproof servo. Good basic servo. They're metal links. Now remember I said this is the cheapest ever Axial crawler. That's a good thing. Don't mind the fact that this is attached to other things. This is from some other project I was doing. This is what the links used to look like on the SCX10. They were bendy plastic. The whole underside of the SCX10 used to be like spaghetti. I'm not using much force here, like that was super bendy. Now, while your more expensive SCX10 IIIs come with thicker links, oh, and incidentally, underneath the Gladiator and the JLU, you've got side steps or sliders that fit right into those slots. This is what the base camp's missing. Your links on most SCX10s are 6mm links. 6mm links on your regular SCX10 III, and the base camp has 3.5mm. For metal links, you wouldn't want to go much thinner than that, but again, you get metal. And it'll be the same, yeah, it's the same axles, but it'll be the same steel machined helical cut gears that they've used front and rear. One big plus you get with this is a very solid drivetrain. It'll be steel gears completely through except for the Delrin spur gear. A 40 amp ESC is going to get warm with a 35 turn 540, but this thing will still have plenty of punch. Waterproof everything, entirely separate, well sorted chassis. Now the plastic brace points are pretty nice, and you want plastic up top because that keeps your weight down. The wheels are pretty. Black Rhino, licensed Black Rhino wheels, but they're not beadlocks. Much like these disappointments that came with another vehicle. Getting the tyres off may not be fun, but they're new Falcon Wild Peak mud terrains. Vented. Nice tread. It's omnidirectional, which isn't for everybody, but it's soft, pliable. Ooh, one thing that's nice is you still have your holes for the body mounts of the other style of axial bodies if you want to add them. And the bumpers they're licensed front and rear, and you've got fair lead holes at least. This is a promising chassis. For a budget entry, we're off to a roaring start. And quite honestly, although I'm not a huge fan of this body, it is actually a lot nicer in person than I expected. The only other thing to note is clearance. We've got a little bit of rubbing, and by a little I mean a lot, on the front bumper. The rear touches as well, so clearances aren't quite ideal. We need to trim a little on the rear and just a shade on the front. I'm loath to move that bumper forward. Can it be moved up? Sometimes you can flip the bumper mount. I don't think, not easily. I think the solution here might just be to take off that inner corner of the bumper. Just slice it off. Do you know what I like about this body though? It just goes on and you just stick your body pins in. It's a lot easier than those hidden clipless ones, and it doesn't look so bad. Another nice touch with this bumper is that your front shackles don't protrude. They don't stick out far forward like some others do. So they're nice and out of the way, which is good, and they're loose and dangly, which is a little thing. You're not going to hear me complaining about the lack of wheel wells, because this is their budget option. Now, I've got these other trucks here, just as a side note, we're going to come back to this. I paid Australian $550 for this. I paid $460. I can get the non-kit, the ready-to-run Sport here, for about 580 Australian, I think. So TRX4 costs more, but it's a different beastie. And then I paid $350 for the RGT Pioneer. Now I've got full review series for all of these and more, but these are really the main competitors to the Base Camp. The Sendero is an incredible performer. The Gen 8 V2 is a great trail truck. The Sport is the one to beat, and the RTR version of that is only slightly more expensive than this. They both don't represent excellent value for money, but they're both the premium end of the basic range of crawlers. And then of course this guy, which is amazing value for money, 60% the cost of these guys, and roughly as capable. So this is the second most expensive basic crawler, and with metal where it matters, including including a metal panhard rod. Look at that. Is it metal? It looks it. Oh, that whole piece is metal. Awesome. What about on the axle side? No, okay. Okay, so there's plenty of plastic on the front axle where the panhard mount goes, and it's coming out of a metal piece. This is pretty good value for money. I can't say excellent in the face of these cheaper other options, not the TRX4, but the other three here. But you've got metal where you need it and quality in the electronics. Okay, it's an average body. They're not bead-locked wheels, doesn't have wheel arches, blah, blah, blah. They've clearly dropped the budget in places. We're going to find that they've cut the corners where it matters and left the good stuff in where that matters. They've made some accommodations for trailer use here. That needs to be put on top, but they've got an accommodation here for towing, which is good. Right, I'm going to get the electronics sorted with this thing. Then we're going to get it out onto the rocks and see how it goes on the 6 problems, because then we'll have some comparison. I was just setting this thing up and getting the endpoints adjusted, and I just thought I'd show you the angle that's possible. Now we're catching on the link there, but just look at that. Everything's nicely greased as well, and these universals from Axial they just don't disappoint. They're so good. Problem 1. I've not touched the bumper yet. I was going to trim a corner of it off, but we're not going to worry until after we've tested this thing. The only thing I've changed is the battery connector to an XT60. That's all I've done. It's very plush. My personal preference instantly is to go for a 45 instead of a 35 turn. The motor's a little bit fast, but at this stage it's a nitpick. Beautiful low center of gravity. Body needs trimming, but I haven't had to reverse, I haven't had to reposition. And look at the angle. So keep in mind here, we're locked. This is really good, really good. So I can already tell you out of the box, the Base Camp is a performer. Tires and foams make a difference. Very true. But remember, we've got no low down weight helping with center of gravity. Oh. Yeah, I'd like a slower motor. That's the first thing I've noticed. It's just a little bit, or even being able to put some expo in to get a bit more resolution down low would be nice. But this thing is quite poised. Now this is a very difficult line. It's the only way I could get up it. You'll see the back left tire is way up in the air. I'm at full lock to the left. That steering angle just has it's just saved this attempt. So we're going to make this without a problem. Higher center of gravity vehicle would have probably tumbled, I'd say. So although it could benefit from a bit more weight down low, it is wonderful. We need to trim that body though. Problem 3 is a very difficult problem. 3, 4 and 6 really. Yeah, we need to trim this body. We'll get to that. Let's just see what this thing can do. We've got no additional weight holding the front down. But if we can ease the front, there are a few ways to do this. I'll try a few things. We might try and come around the rock. We've got some real weather coming in right now. Bit of a nonsense saying that. All right. Oh, it's close, it is close. We might have to be happy with coming up this way. I think it'll do it somehow. I'm just not sure which how yet. Yeah, this'll do it. Ooh, look at that. I don't think I've ever had any vehicle get up problem 3 like this. It's done it. Now that servo is not low on torque, I tell you what. That steering servo is not low on torque. I like it. So that was suboptimal problem 3, but it did it. And I could do it a few more times to make it smooth for the camera, but I won't. You're seeing the raw, unfiltered first attempts, and it's really impressive so far. There's something to be said for simple, and I love scale. It overcomes the need for high performance in many cases for my personal satisfaction of driving. But when you want performance, you want as little weight as possible up top. So having this motor and transmission down low on the skid, oh, look at that. The portals help with reach, the tires are very sticky, and that body is really basic, which in this case is a plus. So, there we go. I never like using throttle like that, except when it's necessary. And it was necessary. Right, problem 4. Okay, problem 5. This first section catches a lot of trucks out. 2 very big round rocks. I always take that middle line first just to see what happens. We've got to trim the back of that body, look at that. But it did it. It's very tidy too. You know, I just thought to myself, where's Tully? She's not here. Okay, that's very smooth, very smooth. Beautiful. While it's up here, we need to cut this corner, just a nice little angle there, because when it's articulating and back, it's catching, just like that. So this bit hasn't been as bad as I thought, but certainly this back corner wants a trim. Right, problem 6. Okay, here's the big one. Although for this truck so far, problem 4 was quite tough. Trimming that body will be step 1. Look at that. You can see right there, it's gnomming away. This is the first attempt. Sometimes I make a few attempts. The wheelbase and the tire size really does the job here. Single take, no funny business. I just wanted to get the sun out of the lens. I'm just holding everything with my hand so that we're consistent. There we go, this is still the first attempt. Haven't touched the truck, just paused while I changed the camera. We're gonna have this. I think. Gee, it's close. I thought for sure we'd have it. The wheelbase is interesting. The wheelbase helped it get to this point, but it's also what's getting in the way. What we need to do is come across closer to where I am now. Yeah, like that. Nope, not like that. I don't know if we're going to get problem 6. It wouldn't surprise me if we did, but we're working for it. There we go. Just got to get the right line. This might be as good as it gets. Oh, it's close. So we're high pointing on this skid here, right under there. I'm trying to get it to fall across towards me without losing our position here. There we go. Done. Now we've got some battle scars here, but you know what? They're signs of legitimacy, because this now joins a very small cadre of vehicles that can do all 6 problems on my course. Stock, out of the box. The Cross RC EMA AT4 and the G-Made Bomb TC were both kit builds, which means I've got some say in what goes into it, obviously, with the electronics. This has outcrawled the Sendero in its stock form. It's easily outcrawled the Pioneer and the Gen 8 in its stock form. Sport, with its heavy weighted wheels, kind of like the AT4, the EMO AT4, it could do all 6 as well. But we have plastic. We have possibly the lightest body, or equally the lightest body. This would be about as light as the Sendero, which is very thin. And while it's not much of a looker on camera, honestly, this is better in person than I thought. I really was expecting it to be a bit of a formless lump. It's better than some of the cheap Lexan bodies you can buy, that's for sure. It's not too bad, and I think with a few little mods and changes, it'll do better. If this was my everyday crawler, this is what I'd change. You ready? I'd trim that piece of body here because it's catching a lot. I'd still probably trim a bit of the bumper, although that didn't get in the way as much as I thought it might. I'd add some side steps, some sliders, because the body's taken a beating on the sides here. I wouldn't change the wheels yet, but I would probably consider putting some brass outers on the portal covers, just to add a little bit of weight, like 50 grams, give or take, 10 grams. But I'd keep everything else pretty similar. Yes, the links are thin. Yes, the body's plain. And yes, I'd like a slower, oh, I also might stick a small opinion on actually, because it's not hugely fast. This is even on 12 volts, but it's too much for this model for just crawling. The motor is actually moderately warm after that, and the servo's cool. So we did just put it through quite a bit then, but I think a 45 turn 540 or a say a 27 turn 550 3-pole, or even a 13 or 14 turn 550 5-pole like the Holmes, as long as it's got sufficient magnet strength, they'd all be good choices. In its stock form, beautiful and lightweight, it dances around on the rocks, it really doesn't weigh much at all, and it's actually quite fun to drive. I wasn't sure I'd like this, and I bought it because I knew it would be something that a lot of you guys would be thinking about. Because I'm lucky enough to have other crawlers, I wouldn't usually have picked this up, but I'm so glad I did. This is one of those rigs that's actually surprised me quite a bit, more than other rigs do. Quick damage report too, because again, we just really threw it around. The body is showing the brunt of some of this. Underneath, the skid's got some scratches because several of these problems, this one and 4 in particular, and 3, it hit quite a bit, but the plastics, like on the diffs, they've barely touched, and there's a little bit of scratching on the middle of the rail. Its longer wheelbase is the kind of thing that is going to cause some high pointing on some like steep problems, but gee, it's stable, and I mean, you saw a few times where it just changed position on the rocks and just kind of danced around, and it maintains that lovely poise. This is a good basic platform. If I was going to run a bigger battery, I'd probably move that one to the front as well. There is space for it. Let me know in the comments what you think, what you'd like to see. We're going to throw this against a few other similar vehicles soon, but for today, I'm so glad to be able to bring you this result. It's really good, and it's all 6 problems out of the box. Yeah, throw me a like and I'll catch you next time on RC-TNT. Thank you for watching.